Yo, yo, what's going on, guys? Happy Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024, and welcome to a brand new week, and also welcome to a brand new year edition of what I like to call For the Birds. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Conscious Kurt, aka Kurt Cadet, aka the Professor in the flesh as always. And here on For the Birds, I like to talk about different forms of negative and toxic behavior, the effects that behavior has on us and our mental health, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it and more control over it in order to have a better quality of our lives going forward. Much similar to our last episode we did about the holiday season, I also have a very special guest with me today who is my best friend of 22 years. He is a co-founder of the 416 Vegan Restaurant, as well as the beverage director of Veganize, which is located in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And he is also a battle rapper extraordinaire. And trust me, I know from experience, he is El Rachmani. El, Happy New Year, bro. What's going on?
Happy New Year, brother. What's going on? Glad to be here. I mean, you're here technically.
Yes.
You're hosting me digitally, but I'm hosting you physically.
Yes, we are currently recording actually right above Veganize in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I got to tell you guys, if you are ever in the New Brunswick area, check this spot out. You don't even have to be vegan to like it, but I'm telling you, the food, the drinks, the ambiance, the music, yo, it'll be a time you will never forget and a time you will want to relive over and over and over again. So hop up on that shit whenever you're in New Brunswick.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. It's even worth making the trip out. Like, you know what I mean? From the city, it's like an hour on the train, bro. Right across from the train station. Good drinks, good food, good ambiance, good decor, healthy product. Good flavors.
Yeah,
Ask for much more.
I had the Reuben sandwich today, along with their Caesar salad. And yo, my stomach is still full right now. And with me with a big appetite, that's really hard to do. So yeah, come check this food out. Like I said, even if you're not vegan, you will fucking love it and it'll make you want to go vegan right away. And also there's a dispensary right down the street too, so you can get high as fuck also.
Dispensaries everywhere today, bro.
Yeah, they're like
Everywhere.
McDonald's.
Yeah, seriously. I think in the city there's more dispensaries than McDonald's, bro.
Sounds about right. Only if only they had drive-throughs.
Yeah, in the city, that's less convenient than walkthroughs.
That's true. I didn't think about that. All right, so getting into our main topic for the day, since it is the new year and since it is new beginnings going on and everybody's kind of in that spirit right now, I want to talk about a subject that kind of resonates with the whole new year and, trying new things and, becoming a newer version of yourself. And that topic I want to get into today is responsibility. Responsibility, I know from personal experience, is something that I've faced many times, and also, admittedly, not proud of it, I've ran from many times. And whether we want to face it or not, and whether we want to deal with it or not, it is something a part of our lives that is inevitable. So, El, I want to ask you, what does the word responsibility mean to you? You and I have had discussions about this privately before, where you've even told me specifically about, the difference between running from responsibility and facing responsibility. And when you run from responsibility, you're not really facing your full potential. But when you face your responsibility, it means you're ready to take the next step. So, from your perspective, what would the word responsibility mean to
Well,
you?
I think what we were talking about then, what you just brought up, like as an example, I think like the gist of it was like kind of like when you deal with your problems, you know what I mean? Like, even if you don't manage to solve all of them, you know what I mean? Or fix all of them, just the fact that you're like dealing with them, acknowledging them, taking responsibility and attempting to deal with them, like not, kind of like brushing it off or hiding from it or running away from it or, like pretending it doesn't exist. Like just the process of like the responsibility lies in the work and in the process and in the journey, not in the destination. So it's not like responsibility isn't measured by did you solve your problems, it's did you deal with them. You know what I mean? As long as you're
Yeah.
dealing with it, you're taking responsibility. It doesn't matter if you figured it all out or not. In that process of dealing with it as a person, you become stronger for dealing with it. You know what I mean? And then eventually, if you keep doing that consistently, like if you keep dealing with all your problems and taking responsibility and facing them head on, even if you don't solve them all, just the process, if you do that over time consistently, you will become stronger. You know what I mean? Because it's like going to the gym. You go to the gym once in your, like, after 20 years, you're not busting out 30 pull-ups. But if you do it every day, even if you don't hit 30 pull-ups, but if every day you do two, three, over the course of X amount of time, the more you do, the less time. But guess what? You're going to be doing more and more. You're going to get stronger, right? So in that same sense, the more you take responsibility, the more you become accustomed to it, the better you get at it, the more efficient you become at dealing with problems, and just in general, it's not that scary anymore. It's not that big of a deal. And then, in turn, you get stronger. As opposed to the opposite, when you run away from responsibility, you're just you don't have that growth and that challenge and that, that strengthening. So, by hiding shit and running away from stuff, if it happens here and there, whatever, it's cool. But when that becomes like, all of a sudden, like now you're overwhelmed by any problem, you're not accustomed to dealing with any problem, everything turns you off, you're running away from everything, and then over time you start losing the skills that you acquired in problem solving, and in general, you know what I mean, you become weaker. So like it's just like, I think if you simplify it to the simplest terms, it's just like it's taking responsibility makes you stronger, and kind of like running away from responsibility kind of makes you weaker over time,
Yeah, bees like that. I had to kind of learn that the hard way over the years. And over the last 12 months, I really made it a point to, take more responsibility and make certain changes that I knew I needed to make and make changes that I knew would benefit me. And I know a lot of people are probably facing that right now with the whole New Year's thing. That everybody's like, feeling like a new sense of optimism, saying, "Oh, this is gonna be my year. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do so and so." And yo, those feelings are great. Those feelings are incredible. Those are definitely feelings you should run with. But the thing is, it's great to have those feelings, but you can't run away from the responsibility that would come with achieving those things that you want so badly. When it comes to like going to the gym regularly or building better relationships with your loved ones, or trying to be more disciplined with the way you react to certain situations and not lose your temper so easily, the thing with that is that doing those things comes with responsibility. The responsible thing to do every morning would be to get up, go work out, even on the days you don't feel like it, even on the days when you feel lazy, even on the days you don't feel up to it. The fact is, you get up and you go do those things anyway. Why? Because it is your responsibility to do so. You made a commitment, you know what you wanted to achieve, you know the things you want to accomplish, but the only way you are going to accomplish them is by going to do the work. Because you cannot cheat the work, you cannot cheat the process. And when it comes to all that, you have to take the responsibility of doing the things you may not want to do or you may not feel like doing in order to get to where you want to be. And I know I've been through those points in my life where I ran from responsibility and I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to deal with it. I was too uncomfortable or whatever had you. But by not dealing with that responsibility and not facing it, you're only making your problems worse and you're only keeping yourself in the same place that chances are you don't even like being in the first place. So that's why I say these New Year's resolutions are great. I support them 100% if you have them, but just understand there is a responsibility that comes with following through on them. So don't ever forget that part, especially when you're so consumed by the good parts and the fun parts of it. Don't ever forget the responsibility aspect of it, because if you do, you're not going to have a strong foundation to stand on.
Well, I think it's like you said, like, to build that strong foundation, there's no shortcuts, you know what I mean? Like, it's a fruit of labor type situation. Like, the real reward is in the work, right? So, like, you know, putting in the work is where the reward comes in. Like, there is no shortcut to getting to the destination of reward without actually putting in the work, because it's like, what makes you grow and get stronger and feel better and get more confidence and be, and you know what I mean, and level up is the work, and like knowing that you dealt with something that, because responsibility can be very scary a lot of times, you know what I mean, it can feel like you can have self-doubt, like you're not confident enough, you're like, you know what I mean, you can feel like,
You're not ready.
yeah, you can feel like tired or defeated or unable, you can just feel overwhelmed, distracted. There's so many, it's not always easy, you know what I mean, but that's what I said. Even if you don't, like, I guess, succeed with flying cars, like even if you don't figure it all out, just the fact that, like I said, that you're not brushing it off, And you know what I mean, like the fact that you're at least trying, even if you're not succeeding at first, just the fact that you're dealing with it and attempting, just that process, that is where the really the rewards come in. And like I said, even if you don't figure out at first, chances are that if you know keep trying again and keep trying again, but you're actually, you know, you have to be analytical about it. You have to actually like try different things and be real with yourself, and not just pretend to, what I mean, to show face. But if you're actually, consistently trying different things, that you'll eventually fucking figure it out, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's great that you brought up that whole fear thing, because I feel like fear is probably the biggest reason why people run away from whatever responsibilities they have or whatever commitments they have, because they're afraid of the way it may turn out. They're afraid of the fact that they may not be able to handle it. They may be afraid of the fact that it may hurt. In the case of exercising, it may hurt a lot. And yeah, sometimes when that fear overpowers you or consumes you, the easy thing for people to do is just brush it to the side and just not deal with it. So that's why in many cases when people talk about joining the gym for the new year and sticking with the gym for the new year, they start in January, but they're done by February. Because that responsibility for a lot of people is scary, and that responsibility for a lot of people they just can't handle because of how scary it is. So instead of sticking with it, even when it's rough, they just choose to run away. And when they run away and don't face it, they're not going to get the rewards that come from it. And that's the sad part about it. When you don't face things, when you don't handle things, when you know you need to handle, nothing good will come out of that. Nothing positive will come out of that. You're not going to grow. You're not going to progress. You're not going to become a better version of yourself. You're just going to stay the same version of yourself. And I know from experience that fear shit is a motherfucker. I've dealt with it my whole life, and in some ways I'm still dealing with it. But I'm telling you, bro, I'm telling all of you right now, that fear shit is not something you should allow to take over to that degree. It'll cheat you out of friends. It'll cheat you out of relationships. It'll cheat you out of a lot of fun you could be having. That fear bullshit and letting it cheat you out of your happiness, cheat you out of the good things in your life, and also that fear shit of keeping you from taking responsibility, all of that shit, all of it
It's
is for
for
the
the birds.
birds.
Nah, for sure, bro. I couldn't agree more. I mean, just like with the whole new year and everything, like looking back, at 2023, that was like a almost like a big theme for the year for me. I mean, it was a crazy year. I think for lack of a better word, a lot of plot twists. You know what I mean? A lot of ups and downs, a lot of changes, a lot of different scenarios. Like, I pretty much left Israel a year ago on my
Yes, the end
birthday.
of 2022,
Yeah,
technically, but
I
still.
booked a flight for my birthday. My birthday just passed, what, 3 days ago, 4 days ago.
Yes.
So it's pretty much sums up a year where I didn't spend a minute in Israel in 2023. Like my
No, you did
feet did
not.
not touch
No, you did
Israeli
not.
soil for the whole entirety of the whole year, after living there for what, like 7 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, it was. You went back in 2015, so yeah, it was 7 years.
Yeah, yeah. So you know what I mean. Like definitely a crazy year, and I feel like one of the main things that got me through that year, or the main lessons that resonated. And it doesn't mean that there's always ups and downs. Sometimes I'm better with it. Sometimes I'm not on top of my game. But it was definitely the whole no fear thing. Like for a good part of that year, I was in a lot of weird situations where I was just like, what I mean. When I felt fear, I would just kind of like double down instead of back down. And it was. I mean, the year started pretty shit, and definitely got, I guess, peaked around the summertime.
I'll
um,
say.
yeah, for sure. But and a lot of those things, that was like the guiding mantra was just like, fuck it, no fear. You know what I mean? Just full steam ahead. You know what I mean? Like embrace whatever may come. You know what I mean?
Embrace being uncomfortable. Would that be one way of putting it?
Well, the whole thing is not being uncomfortable. So like the whole idea was to make myself comfortable in any situation,
I
not to
see.
let the fear get in my head and make me uncomfortable. Like to just remain comfortable no matter what. Like put myself in the quote unquote uncomfortable situations, but when I feel the fear of uncomfortability, instead of backing down and retreating into a place of like you said, fear or feeling uncomfortable, to double down and be like, no, I'm super comfortable. Like
Word.
this is comfy as hell. Like I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? To double down, you know what I mean?
I get
So I
it.
almost like started using fear as like a spider sense, like in the comics, Spider-Man has some type of precognition where, like, if he's about to get ambushed or attacked, he has the spider sense go off so he can anticipate danger. That's why, you know, mixed with his obviously agility and speed and shit like that and reflexes, he can like dodge most attacks because he has like a warning trigger. So almost using it like that, that when I sense fear, I use it not to, to fold or retreat, but to like to counterattack, to like to one up. Like I'm not backing down, I'm doubling down. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So like, yeah, I would use the fear as almost like a fuel source to power my, you know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I feel fear. Let me transform it real quick into fucking courage. It may have also been some liquid courage involved. I did drink heavily this year, but it is what it is. Definitely calm down with that now. You know what I mean? Like it was a wild summer, but yeah, that was definitely one of the big themes for me in that year was the whole like no fear scenario, and definitely something that I need to kind of like moving forward into this year. I guess take the best parts of and keep building on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And as far as New Year's resolutions go, you don't necessarily need to be a new you and do new things. If you're already doing good things and you're like already on a good path beforehand, all you have to do is like really just maintain that shit and maybe add certain things to it. You don't necessarily have to change everything. You could just maybe add more to the good things you're already doing. But yeah, in any event, yeah, that fear shit definitely holds people back. It's held me back a long time, but I'm working on that, getting better at it. And also, another reason why people run from responsibility, a major reason why they run from it, is because of the motherfucking egos. Ah, the egos. And I know I talk about this topic on this show many a time, and I'm going to talk about it even more because it is what it is. But a lot of people, when they have an ego problem, or in some cases, an accountability problem, they are the main ones to run from any form of responsibility when it comes to, admitting when they're wrong, taking ownership to when they mess up, or ownership of any kind of situation where they're the person who may have made a mistake. Their ego and their immaturity in some cases will not allow them to do it. It will always be somebody else's fault. It will always be not ever their fault. It'll always be some kind of excuse, one after the other. But people like that, with that kind of problem, they will do anything except responsibility. And that's some sad ass shit, yo. Because when you can't ever take responsibility for your actions, take ownership for your actions, and you just always put the blame on someone else, and every bad thing that happens in your life is always the fault of someone else, honestly, that's some clown ass shit. And the more you do that, the more you behave that way, the less responsible of a person you're gonna be. And the more of an immature, childish little bitch you're gonna be. And yeah, that ego shit, I know I talk about it a lot on this show, but it's real. And it's become one of the biggest turnoffs for me and other people over these last few years, and for many good reason. Because yeah, when it comes to that, especially when it comes to that, when you can't ever take responsibility, I don't respect that shit. I really don't respect that shit. I don't care what you went through in your past life. I don't care what trauma you went through in your past life. Not saying that that shit isn't valid, but at the end of the day, when you become our age, there comes a point where you have to take ownership for your life. Not your parents, not your siblings, not your friends, not your exes, does not fucking matter. The only person who can take ownership for your life and dictate where the fuck your life goes is the person you see in the mirror every morning. So don't let that ego shit keep you from taking that responsibility, because if you do, you are not going to like that person that you see in the mirror every morning when you do wake up.
I don't usually say this, but honestly, bro, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know what I mean? Like, pretty much nailed that one. Yeah,
It's a
bro.
common theme on the show. I
It's
have to.
listen. It's sometimes it's hard to life is all about perspective, and from your point of view, a lot of people like they have to be the hero in their story. It's hard for them to be the villain in their story. If they can't be the hero, then they can be the victim. They don't really know how to be the villain in any scenario. And things that were obvious to everyone, like you only see them like down the line, you're like, oh shit, maybe they maybe people were, maybe they were also kind of right about some things. Like, it's hard to see yourself in the moment. You know what I mean? It's also a fine line, because if you're overly self-critical, that's a huge fucking problem. But if you're too cocky where you can't be self-critical at all, it's also a huge problem. You know what I mean? So you really got to find that kind of like sweet spot somewhere there in the middle, where you still, you're not afraid, you have self-confidence, you believe in yourself, blah 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 blah, et cetera, et cetera. All that shit's super important. That should be the foundation. But also where you are like mature enough and at peace enough to also kind of like self-reflect and be like, oh no, I could have done that better, or that was probably not okay, and you know what I mean, and kind of like you know check yourself so you could improve. Because if you know what I mean, if you get on that role of like, I can do no wrong for too long, guess what? You end up doing wrong and you don't see it. So you're like, oh, like, the fact that you could get away with it and in your mind still be good, you're like, oh, this is great. I can do this and I'm not doing anything wrong. And only maybe down the road, you're like, oh, okay, maybe that was kind of wrong. You know what I mean? It's good to go on, to be on a roll, but maybe like, you have to still remain rooted enough to also like check yourself. You know what I mean?
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
That's what's real.
Yeah, because I'll use myself as an example. I went through a childhood that maybe wasn't the most stable. It wasn't bad compared to most other people, but it's definitely not ideal when I look back at it now. And as an adult, I could very easily blame like my father not being around as much as he should have been for that, or blame like the fact that I grew up at my grandma's house. I didn't have my actual house of my own until I was 14. I could blame that stuff for my problems as an adult also. While I might not have been responsible for those things when I was a kid, at the end of the day, as a 37 going on 38-year-old man, it is 100% my responsibility to fix those issues that I do have. I can't blame my parents for it. I can't blame my older brother for it. I can't blame my friends for it. I can't blame girls that didn't like me and rejected me for it. I have to look in the mirror and see where I messed up, where I did wrong, and fix that shit, because nobody else can fix it for you. Nobody else can resolve that shit for you. When you become an adult, when you become somebody who's aware of their actions and aware of the person they are, it is your responsibility. There goes that word again, responsibility. It is yours to check the issues that you know you need to check. Because if you don't check those issues, you refuse to check them, and you just have the mentality, oh, that's just how I am, deal with it, then chances are you're not ever going to become the mature adult that you claim yourself to be. Because that's one thing I've learned is that,
That shit is for the birds.
yeah, regardless of what you go through in your past, whatever happened to you in your past, yeah, those things are valid. What may have happened to you in your past may not have been fair, may have sucked. I'll grant you that. But you can't use that shit as an excuse to run away from responsibility, run away from the things that you need to do, and run away from being the person you know you have the potential to be.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, and I've never been to therapy. I mean, you have some experience with that, and
Yes.
this show I definitely is on some therapy vibes. But I feel like I've always kind of like what you're doing on this show. I've always kind of done that with the people that were close to me.
I
Whether it
got
be
you.
you or Ira or whoever. You know what I mean? Even sometimes my team, my staff, my employees. Like I've always trying to.
Be a mentor.
Yeah, I've always kind of had that kind of vibe myself. But
I agree.
one of my like I guess beefs with like once again I'm not anti therapy. I think it's wonderful. I've never tried it personally, but I'm saying like one of my issues mainly is like what you were saying with like, I'll grant you that, but you can't blame. So I feel like it's okay to trace things to your past, not blame your past. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
you can trace it back to like, oh, this may have been the root, or this may have been the origin, or this may have been a spark, and you can trace it back like through therapy and work on that shit. My only beef is like I feel like people sometimes might be a little too quick to not take responsibility, shift the responsibility away from them, even through the woke armor of therapy, and then just blame their parents for everything, or blame their circumstances for everything, or blame some other thing. You know what I mean? Like like what you said, like only you have the power to fix this shit. It's only your responsibility to take responsibility over your own life. You know, there may have been a lot of people that had similar situations that didn't end up in this. You know what I mean? You can't take the biggest factor out of the equation, which is yourself. Like you're the biggest factor. Like so, it's okay to to self reflect and do all these things that you might see in therapy as detective work to trace back to the source. But then you still have to take responsibility, even if it's reclaim responsibility because you were shifting it away your whole life, and then only you can solve the problem and the real work begins. But your therapist can't solve your problems for you; they can just help you trace it back to a certain
Exactly.
source. And that's just like for you to have that little light bulb moment where you're like, okay, I accept responsibility now. Let me go fix it. Like that's not a fix. That's just to trace it back. It's just to
Yeah,
just research. You know what I
because I
mean?
because I've talked about it before with like my dating problems, especially when I was in high school. Like that light bulb went on from my head about a year ago when my mother was talking about the fact that when we first moved to Florida, she didn't come with us initially. She like got things like settled up here before she went, and then she left my brother and I with like a babysitter. And then when she came back, she said I was like attached to the hip to her. Like I wouldn't let her leave my side once. Every time she would leave, I would cry, fucking lose my mind. And then when she said that, I'm like, oh fuck, the reason why I had those issues with girls where I was super attached and maybe came on too strong was because I have fucking abandonment issues because of that. And also my dad not being around as much. Those issues are granted, but at the end of the day, it was still my fault for doing those things with girls when I would talk to them. It was still my bad for behaving that way and acting that way and scaring them off. And now that I realized that I was doing those things and that I was wrong for those things, now I know where I can fix it. Now I know where I can resolve it. And now I know how to be better because of it. But my thing was, I don't blame my parents for it. I don't blame those circumstances for it. It sucked. It was fucking miserable in many ways, and it's not a part of my past I like to, think about too much, but it is what it is. It fucking happened. But as like I said before, as an adult now, I have the responsibility to deal with my life and deal with those kind of issues and become the best version of conscious Kurt that conscious Kurt can be. And for many of you out there, I'm sure many of you might be in that position right now. So I am telling you right now, once you have that light bulb go off on your head and once you realize you may have those issues because of this reason, that reason, and so, you still have to take charge. You still have to take action. And most of all, you still have to do the work. And that part of doing the work is putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and a situation that some ways may be scary and may be something you're not used to, and finding a way to overcome it, finding a way to get past it, and finding a way to take that power away from those things and put that power back in the place where it should always be, which is in your own hands.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you said, I have an issue. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like I said, it's cool to trace it back to somewhere so you can use that as research to see like how can I solve this more efficiently. Like the more it's like the more you know your enemy, the more easily you can defeat them. You know, and
Yeah.
that's your issue at the moment. Like researching it can be helpful to overcoming it, but finding out where it stems from is not the solution. You don't just stop there. Oh, cool! I found out what to blame instead of me. Now I can blame someone else. It's not my problem anymore. You still have that issue. You know what I mean? Like you said, I have an issue. So if it's your issue, it's your problem. It's your da, 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 responsibility. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do the work, yo. If you really want to be better, if you really want that new life, that different life, that New Year's resolution shit you're talking about so much, you have to do the work. And I'm telling you from experience, when you do the work, when you do put in the time and you don't cheat the process, the rewards you can gain from it are fucking limitless. Just like the movie with Bradley Cooper. And some of those rewards and some of those rewards that come from taking that responsibility and putting in that work is becoming more mature, becoming a grown adult. Because I'm telling you guys, I was talking about my other podcast recently, the Nas Stillmatic album, and he has a song on the album called Second Childhood. And it basically talks about people who become grown adults, but even though they're grown adults, they live and behave like children. They never matured, they never grew up, and as a result, they turned out the way they did. And also, another movie example I'll use, the movie Baby Boy with Tyrese. That first half of that movie, he's a fucking child. He lives at his mom's house. He doesn't do the shit for himself that he should be doing. He has two kids with two different women, and he steals their cars half the time and doesn't have his own car. Do you really want to be that kind of person when you become a grown adult? Like, is that the kind of life you want to live? But I know I sidetracked a little bit, but getting back to my point, handling responsibility and doing the inner work and the things you need to do, that is a part of becoming an adult. That is a part of being mature. That is a part of growing up. And when you're able to do those things and not let laziness or ego or fear dictate otherwise, then you will start to see the real results. And then you will start to really become the person you always wanted to be, and in some cases maybe become the person you never thought you could be. But you'll never get that kind of reward and you'll never reap those kind of benefits unless you take responsibility. While it may be heavy sometimes and while it may be hard to deal with sometimes, the rewards that can come from it are rewards that no one and nothing can ever take away from you.
Well, just think about it this way, right? So, like, the more you do, right, with responsibility, the more you wield it, the more you master it, the more you embrace it, the more you kind of accept the challenge and step up to bat. You know what I mean? It's like the more you do, the more you all of a sudden believe you can do, the more you prove to yourself you can do, the more you can imagine doing, right? And if you don't do shit, if you run away from everything, if you're scared of everything, if you're like, that's like a bunch of like limitations, you know what I mean? You're doing less. Therefore, you can imagine less, you can dream less, you can, you know what I mean? You can achieve less, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like habits, right? When you're dealing with it, you're creating like positive habits that yield results. It's like little investments, right? You're
Yeah.
investing time and energy into dealing with your problems, and that shit grows over time, and you get a return on your investment, right? So when you're constantly doing these things, you're leveling up. All of a sudden now, because you're used to doing all these things, you're like, oh man, I can do more than I thought. Now I can take on new challenges. And then I'm like, oh man, now I'm comfortable. I mean, like, that's growth, right? But when you're not doing shit, it's harder for you to imagine yourself doing the wild big things when you don't do the basics, right? Like, if you can't do the simple things, then it's harder for you to imagine yourself doing the big things, right? But when you're on top of doing those little things, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I guess I can do something bigger too. Or when you later like, oh, I guess I could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like even for me, just like doing something as simple as just maybe not eating junk food every day. If I don't eat it for 3 days out of the week, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can do it for 4 days out of the week. Maybe I could do it for a full week. And even with the fasting stuff, I do a lot of fasting nowadays. I might do it for like maybe a day out of the month, like a full 24-hour day. And sometimes after doing it for a day, I'm like, you know what? Let me do an extra 12 hours this day, or 12 hours this day, or 12 hours that day. So if you just do the starting process, you'll be surprised at how much you can handle. But that's the thing. You have to start. And trust me, in many cases, once you start, once you get your feet wet, and once you get that blood pumping a little bit, it won't seem so hard after all. Like even me, for instance, when I wake up early in the morning, when I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning every day, the last thing I want to do half the time is get the fuck out of my bed. I say to myself, maybe I should call out of work today. Maybe I should just have a lazy day, whatever, give myself a break. But once I get out of bed, brush my teeth, wash my face, put my clothes on, and then get out of the house to go work out, in those first 30 minutes, I'm a brand new man. But that's what I'm saying. You have to overcome that initial resistance, that initial shit holding you back. Within a few minutes, once you can overcome it, once you kind of get in the swing of things, you'll be surprised at how much you can do. So yeah, doing things like that, yeah, it'll make you more mature, and also at the same time, it'll give you a lot more self-respect. It's cool when your friends respect you. It's cool when your coworkers respect you and your family and all that jazz. But when you can respect yourself and you have a high opinion of yourself, as long as you have that, any other respect that you gain in the process is simply just a bonus.
Yeah, that's some real ass shit, bro. And like, even like if I view myself even like in a dating lens, you know what I mean? Like, I found that what works for me best. Like I see a lot of dudes, and they're always thinking like, how can they impress girls? You know what I mean? Like in interactions, if they first meet a hot girl, or if there was like a girl they're into, or if they're at a party, whatever. Like the scenario is, like talking to a girl online, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, how can I impress girls? And they think of all these things that they could do to alter themselves to be like more impressive, or things they can say. And I've always found that the best strategy is like, okay, how can I be, like you said, self respect? Like, how can I impress myself? Like, how can I be a version of myself that I can respect more? And then the confidence that comes with that, and the being like self assured like that, and like sure of myself, you know what I mean, is and ends up being a lot more attractive to the opposite sex than, me trying to impress them. Like me more so trying to be the version of myself that impresses me the most is a lot more attractive. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I've always kind of focused more on like the brand than, trying to have a sales pitch. You know what I mean? Like if I'm out there trying to please like trying to like impress all these different girls, every girl might be into different shit. You know what I'm saying? Then who the fuck am I? I'm just changing everything left and right, swapping parts. Just like, would you like me? Please like me, like, you know what I'm saying? But when I do the opposite, when I double down, I'm like, I'm only pleasing my fucking self. I don't give a fuck. Like, you like it, you don't like it. You know what I'm saying? But I'm striving for being someone that I can respect. And like I said, I think I'm easy to please, hard to impress. So like if I'm using my standards and I'm applying it to myself when I'm doing those things, and I'm someone that I can look in the mirror and be proud of, that's when I'm most attractive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, a lot of people would like to win girls over with, like what they have, like what their status is, where they live, and all that jazz. But if you can win somebody over by like you and who you are and how you handle responsibility and how you handle, things in your everyday life, that's the real flex.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you got to be your real, authentic self, and you have to respect your real, authentic self. And as long as you respect your real, authentic self and you like it, then you're good. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to win over anyone. The right people will gravitate towards you. Those people worth having in your life, those people worth being in your inner circle, they will come as long as you make sure your shit, your foundation, and your vibe is on point. And when you take that kind of responsibility and you take that kind of ownership over your life, you are becoming a better leader. You're not being a follower. You're not doing what everybody else is doing. You're not behaving the way that everybody else behaves. You're behaving the way that you know is the right way to go. And when you do that and you go down that path, you are taking the path of leadership.
So I would say it's like, if you're kind of like shifting responsibility, right, and not taking responsibility, if you don't take responsibility over your career, over your, financial situation, over your health, mentally, physically, spiritually, over growth, over your, academics, education, over your arts, over whatever, it doesn't matter what the case may be. When you're not, even just like personal, like behavior traits, you know what I mean? All these things, when you're in turn like not necessarily taking responsibility over your life, you're like almost like, oh, this is the life I have, this is my lot in life, this is the life that, it's like it's all luck or some shit, like this is the life that I was chosen for. Like you're not saying like, no, life is what you make it, I get what I put in. You're kind of like not even taking responsibility of your life. Like whatever happens is just happening by chance. You're like a victim of your circumstance, as opposed to like when you're taking responsibility over more and more things. If you're taking responsibility for the most part over everything, then you're taking responsibility over your life. And then it's almost like you don't have to be a leader to anyone else, but you're a leader to yourself, to your own life. You're forging your own path. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you're not just like a bystander watching your life like a TV show. You're actually like, like, move, let me drive. I know I want to go over here, and you know what I'm saying, kind of like taking a more active part in your own life, and like its trajectory. You know what I mean? You can't get to that without checking off all the little boxes of responsibility on the way from 0 to 100. You know what I mean?
definitely.
Yeah, like by doing all the little ones, that's how you level up to being in control of everything. You know what I mean, in your life. You know what I mean?
Definitely. One thing I think about a lot these days is what kind of husband I would want to be one day because I eventually would like to be married. And I like to think about myself in the sense of can I be the kind of person that my future wife can rely on, depend on, and know that I can handle whatever comes our way and like whatever, adversity we face? Can I be that person who can lead us out of it and keep their head even when things aren't going right and get us to the place where we need to be? Because I know, like, whenever I am married, whenever I do have, dog children, because I don't want real children, I'm going to have to be the person who takes the majority of that responsibility and who's going to be counted on to be the leader. And if I'm going to be a leader, I have to be a leader who is strong, who knows what he's doing, and who knows where he's going and knows where he wants to lead his significant other to as well. And when it comes to being responsible and when it comes to, handling your business and handling your shit, that is what a leader does. That is leadership, not following shit. And I know, as far as being a good husband and being a good friend or whatever else I am in my life, that is the kind of shit I want to be on. And I sincerely hope going into 2024 and the years beyond that that is the shit that you, the listeners, want to be on as well. Because I don't want to create followers. Maybe for my Instagram, I do. I don't want to create followers. I just want to create more leaders so we can all lead ourselves to the right place where we need to be and lead ourselves to the happiness that we deserve and we know we can have. But that's not going to come unless we are responsible.
Well, well, if you're talking about leadership, and you've known me for a long time, you've known that, like, in my career, I pretty much for the last 15 years, almost entirely worked in management. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I've managed in my 15-year career anywhere from 5 to 60 to 150 employees at a time, in many different businesses in many different countries in many different cities in many different age groups and many different environments. You know what I mean? And in that career, you learn quite a few things about management, about leadership. You know what I mean? And I think the main lesson that I learned is that, for one, um, you know, the key to leadership, even like you were talking about a significant other, I'm talking about in the workplace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To building a team and having them actually look to you as a leader, not just out of fear, but out of like respect. Like, I'll follow you. Like, let's go. Like, I'm down with it. To, like, bro, when our restaurant burned down, there was at least 50 employees that were like, nah, I'm following you. Like, we'll wait
We're
a
in this
fucking
together.
2 months and weather this storm, and I'm gonna campaign to save this place because you know I'm a part of this place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So to build that is, I don't think that's, it's not something I take for granted. And I think that comes down to leadership. And I think that the secret to my management and leadership was, to take responsibility. You know what I mean? To never, like, I'm not saying I've never done it before, I'm not guilty of it. I'm saying that's when my leadership failed or it was bad. But, like, if you zoom out and look at the whole trajectory, for the most part, and what kept it that way and made us number one and made us kind of like always grow, was that I tried to instill like a philosophy and almost like, you know what I mean? Like, almost like a philosophy to the business. It's like an unofficial code of conduct. And part of that was not to roll on responsibility to the next person under you. It's more to, like, kind of extract it and suck it up to the top, right? So instead of like being like, oh, my employees are the problem, you know what I mean? They're not good enough. It's like, okay, why is my staff not good enough? That's a failure for me as a manager, you know what I mean? Like, I have to take responsibility over everything. I can't roll off the responsibility to my staff, because then I'm their example of how to deal with things. I'm their superior. If my style is to just, you know, push off responsibility, guess what they're going to do?
They're
They're
gonna do
going
the
to
same
push it
thing.
off to the people that they're in charge of. You know what I mean? They're going to push it off to the customer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
everyone's just going to push off responsibility. But if I inspire them that we get better, and our company code and our ethics and our way of doing it is by taking responsibility, and that's how you level up in the company, and that's how you get promoted, is by taking ownership and taking responsibility. And like you said, if I aim to breed leaders in my company and promote from within and give and move people up and invest in people and teach them, and have like a, an environment where responsibility is the path, you know what I mean, or the way to get ahead, and is what is valued, you know what I mean, that I find that to be the best management style, is a style that promotes, um, creating leaders, and, you know what I mean, people having a voice at the table and being able to present ideas or try things in different ways and being rewarded for taking responsibility over certain problems, saying like, no, no, that I'll take account for that. Like that's my problem. I'll fix it. I'll deal with it. Like that's on me. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
that's something that I think was very helpful for us.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A real leader doesn't create more followers. A real leader creates more
There
leaders.
you go. Exactly.
And that's the way it should be. That's the way we should always strive
That's
to
the
be
way
as
the
far
cookie
as,
crumbles.
and that's the way we should always strive to be as whether we're leaders, as far as owning a business, as far as maintaining a family, maintaining a marriage, whatever it may be. If you're a real leader, if you're really a responsible leader, that is what you do. And one thing a real leader does not do and will not ever do is run from responsibility. I just know myself that I'm tired of running. I'm out of breath. I'm not trying to do that shit no more. So whatever responsibility I can face, I know it's not an overnight process and all that. It takes time, but I just hope all of us as a whole do a better job in 2024 and the years beyond, facing that responsibility, not running from it, becoming better from facing that responsibility, and leveling up in ways that we never thought we could level up before. But it all comes down to the work that you're willing to put in for it.
Yeah, no one's gonna follow a leader that runs away. You know what I'm saying?
Hell with that fuckery.
Right. So maybe we all have a very prosperous 2024. Where filled with responsibility, accountability, growth, and progress.
And good vegan food too.
Come to Veganize. Come check us out.
So my final thoughts on this whole thing are this. It's that I know the word responsibility can be scary, especially when you're a kid and you first hear the word responsibility. You're like, responsibility? I don't want responsibility. I'm just a kid. I just want to be a kid. And that's all well and good when you're 5, 6 years old, whatever age you may be at the time. But when you turn 18 and you move out of your parents' house and you gotta be your own adult, that shit goes out the window. It's your responsibility to create a life for yourself, create a life for a potential family you may have, to deal with whatever problems, whatever trauma you may be dealing with, or past issues you may be dealing with. All of that, once you become an adult, that is all on you. But unfortunately, for many people, instead of taking on that responsibility and becoming an adult the way they should be, they run away. They blame everyone. They're too lazy. They're too tired. They can't be bothered with it. And what do they do when they behave that way? They enter their second childhood. And I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but me, myself, I already lived my childhood in the 90s and early 2000s. I'm 37, going on 38 years old. I'm an adult now, and I need to live in my adult life. And many of us who are in that phase in our lives, we need to do the same as well. And being an adult, being a responsible adult, means checking your ego at the door, overcoming your feelings of laziness, overcoming, in some cases, your feeling of fear, and facing the responsibility that is standing right in front of you. So I just urge all of you guys who are listening right now, who may be facing that responsibility and who may be afraid of facing it, to man up or woman up, look it in the eye, and say, I'm not dealing with you. You're the one who has to deal with me.
Oh shit! Let's go. Talk that shit.
Elle, would you like to add any more final thoughts?
Yeah, just like what you were saying, like I heard like you're too tired, you're too scared. I feel like at the end of the day, if you don't want, not like there's something like don't want to, like just you don't actually want it. Like if you don't want to do something, there's no shortage of excuses to find for not doing it. Your brain will come up with any reason not to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like the options are limitless. Like it's never ending. There's tons of excuses. But when you really want to do something, the opposite is true as well. You know what I mean? There's endless options of how it can be done. You know what I mean? If you really want it, like if you want to do it, you know what I mean? if it's waking up earlier, if it's doing it in small dose, like you take your fucking laptop to work and edit at work, right? Like,
Yeah.
when there's a will, there's a way. You know what I'm saying? So find a way. For 2024, may we all find a way, not an excuse. You know what I'm saying? If you want it, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. You know what I'm saying? So here's to finding a way and not an excuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to finding a way, finding a better way, and being better people along the way. Well, that's all we have today for this week's edition of For the Birds. And like I said before, I'm not a licensed doctor or a therapist, but I do like to use this podcast as a platform and helping others in dealing with those issues a lot easier than I did. And if you ever want to talk to me or chop it up with me in any way, you could follow me on my various social media sites, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. On Facebook and LinkedIn, you could follow me on my first and last name, Kurt Cadet. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, look up my name, Conscious Kurt. Send me a friend request, a follow request, whatever it is. I'd love to talk it up with you, whatever you prefer. Also, if you want to listen to past episodes of the podcast, you could find it on Spotify, Spreaker, or YouTube. Subscribe to it. Leave comments under the episodes. Let me know what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And also send me ideas on other issues that you also think are for the birds that I could talk about in future episodes. But regardless, I will be here for a long time to come talking about different forms of negative and toxic behavior, the effects it has on us and our mental health, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it and more control over it in order to have a better quality of our lives in the future. So until next time, for El Rachmani, this is Conscious Kurt for another edition of For the Birds. Take care. God bless. I know you don't believe in God, but I said it anyway. God bless. And remember, don't be an asshole in real life or social media, because that shit
Is for the birds.
is for the birds. Happy New Year, guys. Take care.
Happy New Year.